Angela pressed her hand tightly against her side as another wave of pain shot through her stomach. It was late at night, and the hospital waiting room felt cold and unfriendly. The hard plastic chairs made it worse, and the faint smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with the sound of a flickering light above her head. She tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like her body was on fire inside. Marcus, her husband, sat beside her, watching every movement she made. His eyes were filled with worry, and his hand rested gently on her shoulder. They had rushed to the hospital because Angela knew this was not ordinary pain. She had felt discomfort for weeks, but tonight it had become unbearable. Each step from their car to the hospital door felt like climbing a mountain. She hoped the doctors would see how serious it was, but as she looked around the waiting room, she felt more like a number than a human being. Marcus kept whispering, "Hold on, baby. We're here now. They'll help you." After what felt like an eternity, a nurse came out with a clipboard. She called Angela's name without even looking up, her voice sharp and tired. Marcus helped Angela stand, holding her arm tightly so she would not collapse. The nurse asked a few quick questions, scribbling notes without making eye contact. Angela explained her pain carefully, telling her it was getting worse by the minute. But the nurse simply nodded and told her to wait again. Marcus frowned but stayed quiet, trying not to cause a scene. Finally, the doctor walked in. He was tall, wearing a white coat, and his steps were brisk. But the moment he opened his mouth, Angela felt invisible. He didn't ask her how she felt or look her in the eye. Instead, he looked at the chart the nurse had written on and muttered, "Another stomach complaint. Probably indigestion." His words cut deep. Angela wanted to cry, not because of the pain alone, but because of the way he dismissed her. She tried to explain again. "Doctor, it's not just pain. I can't breathe properly, and I feel like something is tearing inside." Her voice shook as she spoke. The doctor waved his hand lightly as though brushing away her words. "You're probably overreacting. Some patients come in for every little thing. You'll be fine. Just drink some water and rest while we finish with other cases." Marcus clenched his jaw. He could feel anger bubbling inside him, but he kept his tone calm. "Doctor, please. I've never seen her like this before. She can barely stand. Can't you at least check her properly?" The doctor looked at Marcus for a moment, then gave a half smile that wasn't kind. "Sir, I've been practicing medicine for years. I know when someone is in real danger. Right now, your wife is not in danger. She's just anxious." Angela felt her heart sink. She wanted to scream, but her body was too weak. Her pain was growing worse by the second. She looked at Marcus, her eyes pleading for him not to give up. Marcus gently rubbed her back, whispering, "I believe you. Just hold on. I'm here." As they returned to the waiting area, Marcus watched the doctor walk away briskly, already calling for the next patient. It was as if Angela didn't matter at all. Marcus felt a storm inside his chest. How could someone trained to help people act so cold? He thought of all the times Angela had pushed through life with strength. She was the one who carried their family through hard days, always smiling even when she was tired. Now when she needed help the most, she was being treated like she didn't matter. Minutes passed slowly. The ticking clock on the wall seemed louder with each second. Angela leaned against Marcus, closing her eyes, trying to breathe through the pain. He wiped the sweat from her forehead with his sleeve. Around them, other patients were being taken in and treated. Marcus noticed how quickly some were called, while his wife was left sitting in agony. Angela whispered softly, "Maybe he's right. Maybe I am overreacting." Her words were weak, almost broken. Marcus turned to her quickly. "Don't ever think that. You know your own body. I trust you. You're not overreacting. Something is wrong and we'll make them see it." He kissed her hand and kept holding it as if his touch could give her strength. But inside he was burning. The unfairness of it all pressed against his chest. He knew his wife deserved respect and care, not to be brushed aside. He thought about his promise to always protect her, and he silently vowed that tonight would not be the night she was ignored. Angela's breathing grew shallow, and her face turned pale. She tried to sit upright, but the pain forced her to curl forward. Every movement made her wince. Marcus felt helpless, but he refused to let despair take over. He stood up and walked back to the nurse's desk. His voice was calm but firm. "My wife is in serious pain. She needs immediate attention." The nurse glanced at him nervously. "Sir, the doctor already said it's not urgent. Please sit back down." Marcus leaned closer, his eyes steady. "If she collapses here, you'll all regret not listening. Please, I'm begging you, help her now." The nurse shifted uncomfortably, but she still didn't move. Marcus returned to Angela's side, frustrated but determined. He saw the sweat dripping from her brow, the way her hands trembled, and he knew something was deeply wrong. His anger grew stronger, but so did his love. He whispered again, "Stay with me, Angela. I won't let them ignore you." The night dragged on and the pain grew sharper. The hospital lights glared down harshly, but to Angela they felt dim, as though the world was slipping away. Marcus tightened his grip on her hand, silently praying for strength. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. He would not let this doctor or anyone else dismiss his wife's suffering. Angela sat slumped against Marcus's shoulder, her breathing short and uneven. The minutes dragged on like hours. Every tick of the clock on the wall seemed to grow louder, as if the room itself wanted to remind her how long she had been waiting. She tried to straighten up, but the sharp ache in her stomach pulled her back down, forcing her to curl forward. Her hand pressed against her side, her knuckles white from holding on so tightly. Marcus kept his arm around her, whispering quietly, "I've got you. Just hold on, baby. We're not leaving until someone helps you." His words were gentle, but his jaw was tight. His eyes kept darting toward the nurses and the doctor who moved around the halls as if Angela wasn't even there. He wanted to shout, to demand action, but he also knew his wife needed calm. She didn't need more stress, she needed care. A young man sitting across the waiting room looked at Angela with sympathy. He whispered to his mother, who sat beside him, and she nodded slowly. Marcus noticed, and for a brief second he felt less alone. At least someone else saw what was happening. But sympathy didn't stop the pain Angela was in. Angela tried to whisper something, but her voice cracked. "Marcus, I don't feel right." "It's getting worse." Marcus leaned in closer. "I know, sweetheart, I see it. Just keep talking to me. Don't close your eyes for too long." He stroked her hand with his thumb, his heart pounding. He couldn't help but think about all the times Angela had been the strong one. She was the one who woke up early every day, who took care of their kids when Marcus worked late, who always found a way to smile even on their hardest days. Now seeing her so fragile, his chest ached with both love and fear. He hated how powerless he felt in this sterile, uncaring room. The doctor walked past again, holding a chart for another patient. Marcus stood halfway from his chair, hoping he would stop. Instead, the doctor glanced at them briefly, then shook his head as if to say, "Still waiting?" and continued down the hall. Marcus sat back down, frustration bubbling hotter inside him. He wanted to believe doctors were people who cared, but tonight he saw only coldness in this man's eyes. Angela shifted uncomfortably, moaning softly as another wave of pain hit her. The sound tore into Marcus's heart. He placed his hand on her back, steadying her as she tried to catch her breath. The nurse at the desk looked up for a moment, but then quickly looked away, pretending to be busy with papers. Marcus leaned down close to Angela's ear. "You are not imagining this. I believe you. Don't let what he said get into your head. Something is wrong, and we will get through this." Angela swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes. I don't want to cause trouble. What if they think I'm making a scene?" Marcus shook his head firmly. "Listen to me. You are not trouble. You're my wife and you're in pain. That's enough reason to be heard. If they can't see that, then they're the ones with the problem, not you." Her lips trembled into a faint smile at his words, but the pain quickly stole it away. She clutched her stomach again, bending forward, breathing in sharp gasps. Marcus rubbed her back in circles, his other hand gripping her tightly. He could feel her slipping, and that terrified him. The waiting room grew quieter. Even the families sitting nearby seemed to notice Angela's suffering. A little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mom, why won't they help her?" The mother shushed her softly, but cast an uncomfortable glance at the nurses. Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He stood and walked straight to the desk, his steps heavy with determination. His voice was calm but filled with urgency. "My wife is not okay. She's sweating, she can't breathe properly, and she's been waiting too long. She needs to be seen right now." The nurse shifted in her chair, clearly uneasy. "Sir, please sit down. The doctor has other patients to see first. He already said it's nothing urgent." Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but powerful. "If she collapses out here, you will have to explain why no one listened. Don't do this. Look at her. You can see she's not fine. Please help her." The nurse looked past Marcus at Angela, who now sat hunched over, her face pale, her body trembling. For a moment, the nurse's eyes softened. But then, as if remembering her orders, she shook her head again. I'll see if I can move her up the list, but there's no guarantee. Marcus clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. He wanted to shout, but he knew anger might only make things worse. He returned to Angela's side, kneeling in front of her so she could see his face. I'm fighting for you. Just hold on. I won't let them ignore you. Angela nodded weakly, her tears falling silently. She felt like her body was betraying her. But Marcus's steady voice gave her something to cling to. The minutes dragged on. Angela began to sweat more heavily, her breaths coming in shallow bursts. She tried to shift her position, but her legs trembled as if they might give out. Marcus held her tighter, refusing to let her fall. His mind raced with fear. What if the doctor was wrong? What if they were wasting precious time? He thought about the stories Angela had shared before, about women like her who weren't believed, about how sometimes their pain was brushed aside until it was too late. He never thought he would see it happen to her. Not like this, not so openly. But now it was real, and the weight of it sat heavy on his chest. Angela whispered again, barely audible. Marcus, something's really wrong. I can feel it. Marcus kissed her hand gently. I know, love. I believe you. Just keep holding on. I'll keep pushing until they listen. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier as Angela's pain grew worse. Every second without help felt like a betrayal. Marcus sat there watching his wife struggle to breathe and made a silent promise in his heart. He would not let this night end with her voice silenced. If no one else would fight for Angela, then he would. And deep inside, beneath his calm words and steady touch, Marcus's anger burned hotter. Not just anger at the doctor, but at the injustice of it all. He knew this wasn't just about tonight, it was about something bigger. And when the moment came, he would make sure the doctor regretted ever dismissing the woman he loved. Angela's body felt weaker with each passing minute. She leaned more heavily against Marcus, her lips pale and her eyes half closed. The pain was no longer just sharp. It was spreading, deep and heavy, like her whole body was fighting against her. Marcus's heart raced as he watched her tremble. He kept wiping the sweat from her forehead, whispering words of comfort, but inside he was terrified. Then it happened. Angela slipped sideways in her chair, nearly collapsing onto the floor. Marcus caught her just in time, his strong arms wrapping around her before she hit the ground. Her head rested against his chest and her breathing came in short, ragged gasps. The quiet waiting room turned into a scene of alarm. A few people stood up, shocked by what they saw. Help! Marcus's voice rang out, filled with urgency. Somebody help my wife! The nurse at the desk froze for a second, then rushed forward, finally realizing this was no small problem. A stretcher was wheeled out quickly, and 2 staff members lifted Angela onto it. Her eyes fluttered open briefly and she whispered, Marcus, before closing them again. Marcus held her hand tightly as they rolled her toward the examination room, refusing to let go. The same doctor who had dismissed her earlier appeared, walking in slowly, looking annoyed rather than alarmed. What's all this fuss? He asked, as though Angela's collapse were nothing unusual. Marcus glared at him. She just fainted in the waiting room. She's been in pain for hours. And you said it was nothing. The doctor's jaw tightened. He didn't like being confronted, but even he couldn't ignore what had just happened. He ordered a scan reluctantly, muttering under his breath, Fine, let's see what's really going on. Angela was wheeled into a room where machines beeped and hummed. Marcus stood beside her, watching as nurses placed wires and monitors on her body. He could barely breathe as he waited for the results. Every second felt like a lifetime. He kept whispering, I'm here. Stay with me. Even though Angela's eyes were closed most of the time. The scan results came back faster than expected, and when the nurse handed them to the doctor, his expression changed. The casual, dismissive look on his face melted into one of shock. His eyes widened slightly, and for the first time that night he looked nervous. He cleared his throat. There's an internal complication. She needs immediate surgery. Marcus's stomach dropped. He felt both relief and fury. Relief that the truth was finally out, and fury that this doctor had nearly let his wife die by ignoring her cries for help. He stepped forward. So she wasn't overreacting? She wasn't being too sensitive, was she? His voice shook with controlled anger. The doctor looked away, unable to answer. He gave quick instructions to the nurses to prepare Angela for surgery, his tone suddenly serious and hurried. Marcus stayed at her side, holding her hand, kissing it gently, whispering that she would be okay. He didn't trust the doctor anymore, but he trusted Angela's strength. As the nurses worked, Marcus thought about how close he had come to losing her. His chest ached with both love and rage. He couldn't believe this man, trained to save lives, had treated his wife like she was invisible. If Marcus hadn't pushed, if Angela hadn't held on, she might not have made it this far. Angela stirred slightly on the stretcher. Her eyes opened just enough to see Marcus. Her lips parted and she whispered weakly, "You stayed." Tears filled Marcus's eyes as he bent close to her. "Of course I stayed. I'll never leave you. You're everything to me." Her fingers squeezed his hand faintly before she drifted back into a dazed state. Marcus pressed his forehead against hers for a moment, praying silently for her safety. Meanwhile, the doctor paced outside the room, looking restless. For the first time, he felt the weight of his mistake. The nurses, who had once followed his dismissive tone, now looked at him differently. Their eyes carried judgment and their hands moved quickly to fix the damage that had been almost too late. The hospital hallway buzzed with energy now. The stretcher wheels squeaked against the polished floor as Angela was rushed toward the operating room. Marcus walked alongside, refusing to let go of her hand until the very last second. When a nurse finally stopped him at the operating doors, he kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll be right here when you wake up. You're not alone." The doors swung shut and Marcus was left standing in the hallway, his fists clenched. His body shook with emotion, fear for his wife, anger at the injustice, and determination to hold the doctor accountable for what he had done. He sat down heavily on a chair outside the room, leaning forward with his hands clasped together. He prayed silently, asking for strength for Angela, for the surgeons, for himself. Other families in the hallway watched him quietly. They could feel his pain, see the tears on his face, and understand the love that kept him rooted to that spot. One woman approached and touched his shoulder gently. "She's strong. She'll come through," she whispered kindly. Marcus nodded, unable to speak, his throat tight with emotion. The minutes dragged on. Each time the operating room doors opened for a nurse to pass, Marcus's head shot up, hoping for news. But no news came yet. His mind replayed the doctor's words over and over, the dismissal, the smirk, the arrogance. And then he thought of Angela's soft whisper, "You stayed." Those two memories clashed inside him, one filling him with fury, the other giving him strength. Finally, the doctor reappeared. His face was pale, his voice serious. "She's stable for now. The surgery is underway. It's a complicated procedure, but the team is doing their best." Marcus stood slowly, his eyes narrowing. He wanted to lash out, to scream at this man for what he had done, but he held his tongue. Instead, he leaned in close, his voice low and steady. "You almost cost her life. Don't you dare walk away from this like nothing happened. You will regret the way you treated her." The doctor swallowed hard, clearly shaken by Marcus's words. For the first time, he realized the power of a husband's love and the weight of his own mistake. Marcus returned to his chair, his eyes fixed firmly on the operating room doors. He would wait as long as it took. He would not rest until Angela was safe. And deep inside, he made another silent promise. When this night was over, he would make sure the world knew what had happened, that no one would ever again dismiss his wife's pain without consequence. Marcus sat outside the operating room, his hands locked tightly together as if his grip alone could keep Angela alive. The hallway was quiet except for the occasional squeak of shoes on the polished floor and the faint hum of machines behind the doors. His heart raced with every second that passed. He replayed everything that had happened that night. The dismissive doctor, the waiting room, Angela collapsing in his arms. The anger burned inside him, but so did fear. He prayed silently, asking for strength for Angela, for the doctors working on her, and for himself to endure this storm. After what felt like forever, the operating room doors opened. A nurse came out to update him. "She's stable. The surgery is still going on, but she's responding well," she said softly. Marcus let out a shaky breath of relief. He nodded, whispering, "Thank you," before sinking back into his chair. His body was exhausted, but his mind was sharper than ever. As the minutes dragged on, Marcus thought about the man who had almost cost his wife her life. The same doctor who had smirked at them, ignored Angela's cries, and treated her as if she didn't matter. His jaw tightened at the memory. This was not something he could let go of. When Angela woke up, she deserved justice, and he was determined to get it. Finally, after hours that felt like years, the surgery ended. Angela was moved to a recovery room, pale but alive, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Marcus stood beside her bed, holding her hand gently. Tears pricked his eyes as he whispered, "You made it, baby. You fought through it." He kissed her forehead, his heart overflowing with relief. When he stepped out of the room a short while later, the hospital director was waiting. He was an older man with kind eyes, wearing a dark suit instead of a white coat. "Mr. Williams?" he asked, looking directly at Marcus. "Yes," Marcus replied, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. "I heard about what happened tonight. Some of the nurses spoke to me. I'd like to hear everything from you," the director said. Marcus straightened, his shoulders squared. This was the moment he had been waiting for. "Then listen closely," he said firmly. He began to explain in detail how Angela had been treated from the moment she walked into the hospital. He described the way the doctor dismissed her pain, how he insisted she was overreacting, how Angela nearly collapsed in the waiting room while the staff hesitated because of the doctor's attitude. His voice was steady, but each word carried the weight of his anger and love for his wife. The director listened carefully, nodding slowly as Marcus spoke. Other nurses stood nearby, some with their heads lowered, ashamed of how they had followed the doctor's lead instead of trusting what they saw in Angela's suffering. A few of them quietly admitted Marcus's story was true. When Marcus finished, the hallway was silent. The director sighed deeply, his face troubled. "I'm so sorry this happened. This is not the care you deserved, and it is not the care we promised to give." Marcus's eyes burned, but his voice did not shake. "Sorry won't erase what we went through. My wife almost died because one man thought he knew better than her own body. I don't want revenge, but I will not stand by and let him do this to someone else." The director nodded. "I understand. There will be an investigation. I assure you action will be taken. What happened tonight will not be ignored." Just then, the doctor himself walked into the hallway. His face looked pale and tired, but not from compassion, from fear. He glanced at Marcus but couldn't hold his gaze. The director turned to him sharply. "We need to talk about your behavior tonight." The doctor opened his mouth as if to defend himself, but Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady and powerful. "You dismissed her. You mocked her pain. You nearly killed her. You don't get to explain that away." The doctor's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, his arrogance was gone. The hallway was filled with silence, broken only by the steady hum of hospital machines. The nurses watched with wide eyes, realizing the authority this man once carried had crumbled under the truth. Marcus stood tall, his voice calm but cutting. "Do you know what it feels like to watch the person you love suffer, while the one person who's supposed to help turns his back? I hope you never feel that kind of helplessness. But tonight you forced me and my wife to live through it, and I promise you, you will regret it. Not because I want revenge, but because this moment will follow you for the rest of your career." The doctor's shoulders sagged, and he stared at the floor. The director looked at Marcus with respect and nodded. "Your words are heard, and they will not be forgotten." Angela's room door opened softly, and Marcus turned back, his anger melting into concern. He walked inside, leaving the doctor behind. Angela was awake, her eyes weak but open. She looked at Marcus, her lips trembling into a small smile. "You stayed," she whispered. Marcus sat down beside her, holding her hand carefully. "Always. I told you I'd never leave." She squeezed his hand gently, her strength faint but real. Did they believe us?" she asked softly. Marcus kissed her hand and nodded. "They heard everything, and they know the truth now." Angela closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time that night, she felt peace, not just because she survived, but because she wasn't invisible anymore. Marcus's love had turned her pain into something undeniable, something the world could no longer ignore. As she drifted back into rest, Marcus stayed by her side, his eyes never leaving her face. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The doctor who had once smirked with arrogance now stood silent, stripped of his power. And Marcus knew that in standing up for Angela, he had given her more than protection. He had given her the dignity she deserved. Angela lay resting in her hospital bed, the steady beeping of the monitor beside her bringing a strange sense of comfort. The pain that had consumed her hours earlier was finally beginning to fade, though her body still felt heavy and sore. Marcus sat in a chair right next to her, his fingers intertwined with hers. He hadn't moved from her side except for the moments he was forced to step into the hallway. His eyes were tired, his shoulders stiff, but his spirit was still sharp. He watched every rise and fall of her chest, thankful for each breath. Morning light began to creep through the small hospital window. It painted soft golden streaks across Angela's blanket. She stirred slightly and opened her eyes, squinting at the brightness. When her gaze found Marcus, her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You're still here," she whispered. "Of course," Marcus replied gently. "I told you I'm not going anywhere." Angela closed her eyes again, a tear slipping down her cheek. It wasn't just from relief. It was from knowing how much her husband had fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Later that morning, the hospital director returned to their room. He stepped inside quietly, carrying a folder in his hands. Marcus straightened immediately, his body tense, but the director's calm expression softened the air. He spoke respectfully, his voice steady. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams, I want to thank you for your patience last night. I know nothing can erase what you went through, but I need you to know the hospital is taking this very seriously." Angela watched him silently, too weak to speak much, but Marcus nodded for her. "We just want to make sure this doesn't happen again," he said. The director lowered his head. "It won't. I've already started a review and there will be consequences. That doctor's actions put your life at risk, Mrs. Williams. And Mr. Williams, your words carried weight. You stood up not only for your wife but for every patient who might be dismissed in the same way." Marcus squeezed Angela's hand, pride and sadness mixing inside him. "I didn't do anything special. I just told the truth." She deserved to be heard. The director nodded, leaving the folder on the table. "This is a formal record of your complaint. We'll keep you updated, and on behalf of the hospital, I truly apologize." With that, he gave them a respectful bow of his head and left. When the door closed, Angela turned her head toward Marcus. "You made them listen," she said softly. Marcus leaned closer, brushing her hair gently back from her forehead. "I just did what any husband should. You're my world, and if I have to fight the whole system to keep you safe, I'll do it." Angela smiled weakly, her eyes shining with both love and gratitude. She felt stronger knowing Marcus was by her side, not just as her husband but as her voice when hers was ignored. As the day went on, nurses came in and out, checking Angela's vitals, adjusting her IV, speaking with a kindness that hadn't been there the night before. Marcus noticed the change. They now looked Angela in the eye when they spoke to her, treating her with the respect she had always deserved. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. The story of what happened in the waiting room had already spread through the staff. Everyone knew how close Angela had come to being lost. And everyone knew the reason she was still alive was because Marcus refused to let her be silenced. In the afternoon, the very doctor who had dismissed Angela entered the room quietly. He didn't look like the same man who had waved away her pain with arrogance. His shoulders were hunched, his eyes downcast. He cleared his throat, then spoke in a voice much softer than before. "Mrs. Williams." "Mr. Williams." "I came to apologize." Angela looked at him, her face calm but unreadable. Marcus sat up straighter, his hand tightening over hers protectively. The doctor swallowed hard. "I was wrong. I didn't listen. I thought I knew better and I almost cost you your life. There's no excuse for that. I can't take back what happened, but I want you to know I regret it deeply." The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You can't undo what you did. My wife almost died because of your arrogance. But if you really regret it, then prove it. Don't ever treat another patient the way you treated her. Don't let anyone else feel invisible like she did." The doctor nodded, shame clouding his eyes. "I understand," he said quietly before turning and leaving the room. Angela let out a shaky breath, her hand still tight in Marcus's. "You didn't let him break me," she whispered. Marcus kissed her knuckles gently. "You were never broken. You're stronger than anyone I know." The next few days passed slowly as Angela recovered. Marcus stayed by her side the entire time, sleeping in the stiff chair, waking at every sound she made. The nurses often brought him coffee, impressed by his devotion. Angela's strength returned little by little, her color returning, her laugh slowly finding its way back. Each improvement was a victory, and Marcus celebrated everyone. On the day Angela was finally discharged, The hospital staff lined the hallway as she was wheeled out in her chair. Many of them smiled warmly, offering quiet words of encouragement. Some even apologized softly, acknowledging how wrong the night had been. Angela held her head high, her hand resting proudly in Marcus's. She no longer felt invisible. She felt seen, valued, and loved. As they stepped outside into the fresh air, Marcus paused and looked at her. "You ready to go home?" Angela smiled, her eyes glistening. "Home sounds perfect." Marcus leaned down, kissing her forehead gently. Then home it is. They walked out together, hand in hand, stronger than before. Angela knew she had faced the fight of her life, and Marcus had been her shield. And Marcus knew his love had been tested in the hardest way, and it had only grown deeper. The memory of that night would never leave them, but neither would the lesson. Pain may have tried to silence Angela, but love gave her a voice. And because Marcus refused to let her be dismissed, the world had been forced to listen.